If doing IT still feels like 1995, you need Atera, the world's first AI-powered all-in-one IT platform. Atera's AI solves most...
So coming in at number 10 is the most recent sighting. During the last weekend in August, fans of Nessie went on a huge hunt for the monster. That's when the sixth so-called sighting of the Loch Ness Monster this year was recorded by a woman who was baffled after seeing a curved creature in the legendary water on August 31st. Fiona Wade claimed that it was like nothing I've seen before and I can only describe as Nessie. She reported seeing something similar to which was spotted by civil servant Alistair Gray on August 26. Mr. Gray saw three odd and seemingly connected shapes near Invermorrison. Miss Wade said her sighting was almost identical to that seen by Mr. Gray and probably in a very similar location. I might add that I was not aware of this sighting on Saturday until returning home this evening. It initially looked like a periscope, but then two curved areas followed. It was moving about halfway in the loch, looking roughly over to midway between Foyers and Whitebridge, she said. I've seen deer crossing before, but this was like nothing I have seen before, and I can only describe it as Nessie, as I can't think of any other logical thing it could have been. It was large enough to catch my eye and appeared to leave slight wake behind it, she added. The sighting took place at 10:45 a.m. The water was calm and there was allegedly no nearby boat activity. The sighting, which lasted 30 to 40 seconds, has been accepted by the official Loch Ness Monster Sightings Register. Number 9. The first sighting. The earliest report of a monster in the vicinity of Loch Ness appears in the Life of St. Columba by Adaman, written in the 7th century AD. According to Adaman, writing about a century after the events described, Irish monk St. Columba was staying in the land of the Picts with his companions when he encountered local residents burying a man by the River Ness. They explained that the man was swimming in the river when he was attacked by a water beast that mauled him and dragged him underwater, despite their attempts to rescue him by boat. Columba sent a follower, Lugin Mako Min, to swim across the river. The beasts approached him, but Columba made the sign of the cross and said, "Go no further, do not touch the man, go back at once." The creature stopped as if it had been pulled back with ropes and fled, and Columba's men and the Picts gave thanks for what they perceived as a miracle. The believers in the monster point to this story set in the River Ness rather than the loch itself as evidence for the creature's existence as early as the 6th century. Number 8. Aldi McKay. The best known article that first attracted a great deal of attention about the creature was published on May 2nd, 1933 in the Intervest Courier about a large beast or whale-like fish. The article by Alex Campbell, water bailiff for Loch Ness and part-time journalist, discussed a sighting by Aldi McKay of an enormous creature with the body of a whale rolling in the water in the loch while she and her husband John were driving on the A82 April 15th, 1993. Now the Courier in 2017 published excerpts from the Campbell article, which has been titled "Strange Spectacle in Loch Ness." The creature disported itself, rolling and plunging for fully a minute, its body resembling that of a whale, and the water cascading and churning like a simmering cauldron. Soon, however, it disappeared in boiling mass of foam. Both onlookers confessed that there was something uncanny about the whole thing, for they realized that there was no ordinary Dizen in the depths because, apart from its enormous size, the beast, in taking the final plunge, sent out waves that were big enough to have been caused by a passing steamer. Number 7. Arthur Grant. On January 5th, 1934, a motorcyclist, Arthur Grant, claimed to have nearly hit the creature while approaching Abriacan near the northeastern end of the loch at about 1 a.m. on a moonlit night. According to Arthur, the creature had a small head attached to a long neck. Then the creature saw him and crossed the road back to the loch. Arthur, a veterinary student, described it as a cross between a seal and a plesiosaur. He said he dismounted and followed it to the loch, but only saw ripples.
Running your business without a tax strategy is like eating spaghetti without utensils. It's ill-advised and it's actually
He produced a sketch of the creature that was examined by zoologist Maurice Burton, who stated it was consistent with the appearance and behavior of an otter, but I'm not too sure. Regarding the long size of the creature reported by Arthur, it has been suggested that this was a faulty observation due to the poor lighting conditions, and paleontologist Darren Nash has suggested that Arthur may have seen either an otter or seal and exaggerated his sighting over time, but I don't care what they say, that drawing he drew of the beast is the Loch Ness Monster. It's not just a simple otter. Number 6. Surgeon's photograph. The surgeon's photograph is the first photo of the creature's head and neck that was taken by Robert.
At number 10, we have Monster in the House. So one house had beings that came along with it. Each member of a family that lived there for under a year had their own haunting experience, so it was a lot of experiences in a row. The first to have an experience was the daughter, who was 3 at the time. She would wake up in the middle of the night absolutely terrified, scared of the monster in her room. It was brushed off by her parents as just something that she saw, and it did eventually stop. But after it had stopped, her dad started waking up in the middle of the night himself. He had this feeling that something was staring at him. In the corner of the room, he saw a shadowy black and gray apparition that gave him the chills. This kept happening a few times a week for months. His fiancée even said that she saw a faceless child looking at her beside the bed, and they moved out after the frequency of all these spottings got even worse. Once they moved out, they slept normally ever since. At number 9, we have screaming. A Redditor named Blackwater Project talks about an experience their daughter had. From the age of 3 to the age of 8, their daughter talked about people with no faces and figures of shadows. The daughter would wake them up in the middle of the night and say there was a man or figure standing in their closet. One of the most frightening stories was when their daughter asked if they heard the screams. She was asking if they heard the screams of a figure that stood in her doorway and screamed at her, and then flew to her parents' room and screamed at them. She sobbed uncontrollably to her parents because she didn't understand why they didn't wake up from the screams. The parent who posted this says the encounters did stop, and now their kid is 11. But now their daughter just refuses to talk about her past experiences. Number 8. Dozens. So Pinion_gear on Reddit was just napping before they had their own encounter. They had just had some teeth pulled and were on bed rest. When they slowly woke up, they heard indistinct whispering. They described it as if some people were talking to each other in the next room, but they couldn't make out what they were saying. But what was making the noise wasn't in the next room. They were all right there. So the Redditor opened their eyes to see dozens of tall, thin, shadowy figures in the room. The type that looked humanoid, but also the type that you couldn't focus on even if you looked directly at them. These shadowy figures moved about the room, not really minding the sleepy person in the room with them. It personally seems to me like the person who got their teeth pulled stumbled upon a ghost party, or the ghost party stumbled upon them, because I just wonder if spirits target people whose stories are less likely to be believed. Because just stay with me here. If I was a spirit trying to keep the spirit world low-key, I would only come to this plane of existence when I could get away with it. And so, throwing a cocktail party in a room with a guy taking a nap just seems hilarious, because just like, don't mind Dave, he's the decor. I've decided on a 21st century man with less teeth as the piece for our little cocktail party. I'm just guessing that's what the spirits are saying. Just imagine. She's like, hello. We're all the ghosts, but look, it's a man. He doesn't even see us. Dave. He has no teeth. Great. Number 7.
Hey, I'm Joey, and I'm one of the 30 AI voices from SpeechLab. You listened to this video until now and you probably couldn't tell I'm not a real human voice.
A dream message. So another person shared their own story anonymously with the Occult Museum. They said they were having a vivid dream where someone was whispering something in their ear. And as with many dreams, they don't remember the exacts, but they were whispering secrets. And then when they woke up from the dream, they looked across the room and saw it. A shadow darker than the darkness of the room that turned and looked at them. They called out to it in confusion and it ran straight into a wall. When it reached the wall, it was like a splash of darkness dissipating into smoke. Now, they say they absolutely believe it was what was whispering in their ear before they woke up, and they caught it before it left. I wonder if they can like reach into your minds and like see what's going on. It's like, oh, you're in a dream? You're having a good time? Let me just whisper. Rude. But let's go on to number 6, more than one type. So a Reddit user named Dim saw 2 different shadowy figures at 2 different times. One was more benign and the other was malicious. So when Dim was a kid, the demonic one, the malicious one, haunted their bedroom. It looked like thick smoke and left a bad stench, they said. It also left all the signs of a haunting. Cold air, a sense of fright, religious objects falling down, scratches on the ceiling, and even a face appeared. So the non-hostile ghost was different. It was more translucent, more like a shadow, and they saw it looming over their mother as she slept. Once it noticed them, it divided itself into 3 different beings and ran straight through them one at a time. So not all of these shadow people are scary, but many are. I don't want them to mess with me, I'm sorry. Number 5, adopting a disguise. One person was staying at their mom's house on a hometown visit and were lying in bed about to go to sleep. That's when they felt and heard a presence in their room. They thought it was their brother just trying to get something, so they turned to look at him, but it wasn't him. It was a tall, shadowy figure darker than the shadows of the room. As they kept asking what the figure wanted, it moved closer and closer to them. They felt a fear and weight on them from the looming presence, so they shouted at it to leave, but it didn't go until they used their phone light to light up the room. After that, they prayed over a rosary and eagle feather until they fell asleep. They say it returns as a boy of maybe 7 or 8 with sad eyes that peeks around corners at them, but they say this visual of a boy is all a facade, hiding the darker shadow person. Using a nicer figure to try to lead to some trust, but it's really hiding something much, much more sinister. Let's move on to number 4, trespassing. So when a woman named Courtney was about 10 or 11, she explored an abandoned house. It was daytime and she was exploring a couple of the rooms, but there wasn't really much there to see. But when she turned into a hallway, at the other end of the hallway was a shadow person. It was looking at her, but it had no eyes. They kind of stared at each other for some time and she thought it wasn't real, just a figment of her imagination. But then it slowly started walking towards her. She turned to leave, and from the corner of her eye, it seemed like the being had traveled 7 meters in a split second. She kept running out of the house and looked back to see if it had followed, but the shadow person had stopped at the door. She said it was as if it was unable to leave the house, and then it turned back around and returned to where it was before. With all that, I think it was just saying, what are you doing in my house? But couldn't really communicate because it was a shadow person, and then chased him out. Defend your territory, man, you know? At number 3, caught on camera. At the St. Augustine Lighthouse, a camera captured a shadowy figure. At first, the shadow just looks like someone casting a shadow off camera, but if that was the case, the shadow would have had a different depth of field when it passed the room on the left. In addition, the window in the other room casts a brighter light than this side, and you can see the light coming through the shadow. Plus, the shadow just doesn't go across the whole screen or video. It stops, enters the room, and you can see the wall. It's different. So people around the comments of the video argued whether or not it's real or edited in post-production, which is possible really, so please let me know what you think about it. Number 2, red eyes. K. Willstonia on Reddit said he had seen his fair share of shadow people. He also disclaims that he has had sleep paralysis on and off, so this could be an explanation for one of his creepy encounters. So one day he slept in until around 9 a.m., which isn't really sleeping in for me, but anyways, his room was pretty well lit when this happened. He woke up and his computer screen was turned towards the bed and the monitor was off. But then on the screen a man appeared and said, "Don't look into his eyes." So then, once he heard that, he noticed a huge hulking shadow appear out of his open closet door. He says it was about 6 feet tall with a huge torso and long arms with pointed fingers at the ends. The shadow being itself was transparent except for the eyes that were red and opaque. With the figure staring at him, he couldn't move and eventually just shut his eyes, waking up hours later. He felt lethargic afterwards, but blamed it on sleeping in too much. But it could have been the shadow figure. Just saying. But lastly, let's move on to number 1, the being on the road. So this last one comes from ItchyZSoul7 on Reddit. He was riding his bike home from work through a residential neighborhood. While riding, he saw a form standing in the middle of the road. It kept backing up as he moved forward until he passed a stoplight, and at that point it stopped in the middle of the road right in his path. Then he was able to see it. Its body was made of shadows, but it had a full form. It had deep scarlet eyes, and it raised its head as he kept approaching and opened its mouth, and he could see rows and rows of jagged teeth. but there were no other identifying features. He was able to get away after he had a bit of a fall and then got back up, but now the figure haunts him. He sees it once or twice a week and it follows him around to different cities to work, but no one else sees it. He's currently fielding answers to see if he can figure out what exactly this is, so if you want to check it out, it'll be linked in our sources below.
Legend of the Shadow People. Light and dark have long been associated with goodness and evil throughout history and across cultures. Shadow people are supposed to be the embodiment of evil from the dark side, the other side. Humans have perceived shadow people throughout history, but more recently we have given them the name of shadow people. In folklore, these are interdimensional beings that have the ability to shapeshift and travel into our dimension. Shadow people are usually tall and sometimes have glowing red eyes. Generally, shadow people simply stalk or observe with a threatening unspoken intent. A late-night talk show on Coast to Coast AM held a lengthy segment on shadow people in 2001, and one of their hosts interviewed a Native American elder called Harley Swift Deer Reagan. Throughout the show, listeners were encouraged to send in their drawings and experiences of shadow people, and the response was overwhelming. There are a lot of psychological explanations for seeing shadow people, including sleep deprivation or sleep leading to the phenomena of pareidolia. This is where the mind responds to a stimulus by making you see things that aren't there, like figures or faces. Is the presence of shadow people simple science, or is there something deeper and darker going on? Can the rest of the numbers on this list be attributed to shadow people, or are they something else entirely?
Bam! HelloFresh. Guys, shrimp spaghetti with a kick is what we're gonna make. You guys know that HelloFresh makes cooking dinner easy, fun, and affordable? Let's do this. Everything is
Worrying about where I'm going to eat and what I'm going to eat should not be a worry of a child.
Starting us off at number 10 is the Rogue School. Founded in 1988, Miracle Meadows was a Christian boarding school located in West Virginia, and its sole purpose was to try and put troubled youths on the right path. It did everything but that. The Department of Health and Human Resources had been trying to shut the school down since 1994, but it took 10 more years for them to get substantiated complaints against the school's founder, Susan Gale Clark, and teacher, Timothy Arrington. Arrington was accused of choking a student unconscious on one occasion, and on another occasion, he handcuffed a bunch of students